I'm Kelsey Litchfield, and this is the Field Advisor Podcast, where I talk with local experts to unpack the latest agronomy information and research, giving you the knowledge to make informed decisions out in the field. Welcome back to the Field Advisor Podcast. No stranger to us, probably very well known across the state, Dr. Connor Sible. Not at a field day, and Stephanie's joined us as well, but Connor, are you field day out? Are you done for the summer?
I wouldn't say we're done for the summer, but it is nice being on the other side. I'm just here enjoying it. Taking
there
it
you
in.
go.
I'm not on the hook, so just taking it all in today. Yep.
Good deal. So, okay, tell us what you've been up to lately. What are some of the trials you're doing? I know we're doing tissue testing with them, so if you want to talk about that, that's funded by the checkout, but just give us a little update of what you're doing.
Yep, so corn and beans, a lot of different things. Last 2 weeks been doing a lot of corn roots for the root architecture work, Sam Laskonich. That's probably been a big portion of the corn research.
Yeah.
But on the soybean side, yuck.
No, corn roots. That was when I went to grad school back a long time ago. That was the worst, student worker job.
Yep, so we got smart enough. We dig them in the morning, and then we wash them in the afternoon.
And it was really hot this summer as well, yeah.
It was. Friday was our last day, and it was the best day. And they were all like, why didn't we do this now? But now the advantage is, so what are we doing now? Physically not much, kind of waiting for harvest so they could enjoy the beautiful weather days.
Oh, nice.
But soybean projects, the tissue testing one, we talked about that. We got a whole podcast on that one.
Oh, yeah.
That's exciting in year 2, renewed for year 3. Thank you very much for that support. And it's just been exciting finding that, getting a lot of engagement with that. We are starting to get that mapping, that phase 1 that we kind of talked to as we prep for phase 2. So that's still going on. Planting date studies have kind of wrapped up for us. We're pretty confident, the earlier has the better chance. Not a guarantee, but higher yield potential for sure on that. And then we're doing a lot more in sulfur these days, working with our own trials and then helping with the Field Advisor, the on-farm sulfur trial network with Stephanie and Darby. And exciting following that. And we're going to expand that one to multiple sites, so sulfur on there. And then just what we're seeing, I don't know about you guys, but the beans are tall. They really took off. So internodes, they're leggy. We're looking at that. In the dry areas, we're looking at seed size, so keeping an eye on that as we go into harvest to make sure those combines are catching them. Sulfur, tissue testing, corn roots. I'm missing a lot, of course.
Oh, there's a lot probably going on. Let's stick with sulfur for a second, because Stephanie got a question this morning about sulfur. Stephanie, you can probably ask it better than I can, but when we were at the Golden Harvest tent, they said, is this sulfur thing really worth it? That's probably not the way I'm describing it.
I think that's kind of why we're doing it. They're like, well, how do we start? So that's usually one of the first questions, and we have a producer's concern survey. And it seemed like I've been here for 3 years now, and that was like the thing that people kept asking about, because even my own brother started putting sulfur on before corn. So we know a lot of people, for example, are doing that, or people on our board were talking about that. But then they're like, what about sulfur before beans, And then there was a lot of tissue testing questions as well. You just do what the lab tells you to do, and we've had these discussions. And to your point, are you pulling the right leaf? Are you going at the right, you're pulling at the right certain time, right? You're not doing different timings, correct?
Well, we're repeat sampling all season long. And the general recommendation is newest, recently mature. So when we go out there, we always collect that sample, which is towards the top. So
you are doing all different growth stages.
Yep.
And so you're doing that as a replicated type of process in small plots in 3 different locations across the state, or just at Urbana?
This one's just Urbana because of how frequently we have to go out. It's every 5 to 7 days that we have to catch the next set of nodes. But it's interesting when you talk about the lab recommendations and the thresholds. If you talk to a lot of the industry folks and the high yield growers, their thresholds for critical values are way higher than what the current lab recommendations are. And then there's a lot of questions: where do those come from? What makes it the critical on a threshold on a tissue test? Soil testing is a little bit, there's a lot of data out there on build up and maintain, and when does that response curve flatten. Tissue testing, it's in the plant in the moment, so it's hard to really figure it out. That's why we're doing the project. With second year data, we'll have a lot more confidence in what we're seeing on the timing side.
Another question we get is, when is the greatest uptake of sulfur? Is that around the reproductive stages, or?
So in general, yes, especially these days, we start flowering at like 7th trifoliate. It's already out. It's kind of crazy. But the thing about soybean, which is why it's so frustrating at times, but exciting what it could be, its peak uptake time period is extended. Corn has that big spike where we're jumping from V8 to tassel in a 3-week period. A lot of biomass in a very short window. Beans, they grow so slow that they need a little bit of sulfur, phosphorus, nitrogen every day for an extended period. Then it starts from the beginning vegetative, but yeah, mostly that R2 through R5 into R6, that steady need of sulfur.
And I know a lot of people are tissue testing around that R1, R2 stage. So that's when Darby and I took ours on our on-farm trials all across the state. And that was, I think I kept telling her that the only reason we got that done was because our planting dates were so stretched. Because otherwise, I think they would have all been flowering at the same time. A lot of guys plant in April, mid-April. So, I'm trying to think what I was going to say. I lost my thought.
Well, as far as the timing goes, I mean, that's early enough that if you want to try and make a correction, you could. If we're going later than that, it's probably just documenting what we could have done better for the next year.
So I think a lot of guys are going in and tissue testing around that R1, R2 growth stage because they're getting ready to maybe make a fuller application. A lot of people putting fungicide, insecticide, not everybody. But then that would be an opportunity where they could go in and maybe do a fuller application.
Exactly, especially because if we can get the free ride, right? If it goes out with a late post-emerge herbicide or with the foliar fungicide, you assume that diesel's already being paid for by that application. So it reduces what you could pay in quotes, total cost of having to do that extra product application. And a lot of the foliar feeds on the micros, you might be able to get enough out there. Some of these foliar PK sulfur, you think, can you really foliar feed that much? But what the theory is and the thought behind it, and this is that phase 2 and 3 that we kind of talked about, is the idea is it's like pushing the first domino, or it's the drug addiction where you give that plant the first taste of that and it says, ooh, that's good. Do I go get more? How do I get more? And then it drives root uptake of those macros. That's really what we think is going on with these foliar macro applications. But how do you time it? And then, those R1, R2, we're maybe a quarter of our nodes have really emerged and developed. So a lot of season left. Does it translate to what the future ones will be? The good news, with the data set we're collecting on this tissue testing project, we are going out every 2 sets of nodes throughout the season, and we will be able to get a better idea on just how that nutrition flows. So get a lot of excitement about that one. I wish I had, here's the answer today. I know you're looking for that today. We're kind of skirting around it. But
Your Field Advisor Forum presentation, you alluded to that a little bit, so they can go back on YouTube and see what you've done so far. But,
exactly.
I mean, that's just year 1.
Yep, and we got the second year going, and then that third year we pieced together, and as we go, we're learning a lot about it. And then working, excited to announce Darren Mueller at Iowa State got a United Soybean Board project on updating leaf disease backgrounds, and I'm butchering this as I go, but updating the soybean disease portfolio. There we are. That's the word I looked for.
Yeah.
But as a part of that, there's symptoms that we might think are disease that are not, and is it these unique nutritional imbalances? So the ISA tissue project has led to us being involved with his project as a sub-award on that. And that'll help expand the inference too. Like you said, we're just doing this in Urbana right now, but we're going to start receiving samples that have been confirmed non-disease, so they must be nutritional, from different parts of Illinois,
That's
Iowa,
very cool.
and expand the inference. So what we're doing now is building that database so that we can then better advise producers what the lab recommendations say versus what we're seeing, and getting some more ground truth data to it.
And I think the cool thing about the on-farm trial system is we can look at sulfur on all different planting dates, all different management. And when I say all different management, we didn't plan for this, but I bet we have every different row spacing imaginable, some that we weren't familiar with. And cover crops, no-till to till to, different rotations.
And that'll be really valuable. And one of the trains that I've been kind of pushing forward on the sulfur side is these high residue scenarios. We always talk about C to N ratios, and why continuous corn needs more nitrogen, because it's that C to N ratio and it immobilizes it. And as we figure that out, I think we've got really good management strategies and recommendations for nitrogen in high residue systems. Just behind that, I think that we've overlooked is these sulfur deficiencies, and not just for the plant, as we kind of talked earlier, but C to S ratios are very, very, wide range, and it's hard to measure and when you measure it. But, we talk C to N ratios are somewhere in a lot of our residues between 50 and 80 to 1, depending on what type of residue we're in. C to S ratios are upwards of 300 to 1. And I'm wondering, is it a sulfur response in our crop, or are the microbes in our soils now sulfur deficient? Because about 60% of sulfur uptake is removed with the grain. And one of the things when I think about nutrients, the soil releases P and K and nitrogen. We get atmospheric nitrogen brought in through the bradyrhizobium and other. Those nutrients are put back in the system or released through the soil. Sulfur is the one we're not actively putting back in the system in some manner or form, whether it's natural or through fertilizer, unless we're fertilizing. So I'm starting to also wonder, are our microbes becoming sulfur deficient, not just the plant systems?
That's
and that might be where some of those dual benefits are
I
coming
know
through.
as a seed agronomist, I made some field calls with corn. You can, early on in some of those higher residue situations, you could clearly see the deficiency symptoms. And I think that's something where we don't see those visual symptoms, or maybe we're not seeing those symptoms if soybeans are deficient necessarily. And maybe we are and we're just not catching it, or they're shorter, or we don't know for sure.
Yep, or that soybean plant reads that and then just sets a lower potential. So it's like, I don't have enough to go big, so I'll just go small, and therefore if I stay small, I don't have the deficiency, where it's what could it have been. Yeah, I think that's all of the above.
All the above.
Yeah, and I think that's partly, though, the high residue. We used to think nitrogen limitations in high residue, and I think sulfur limitations is part of the reason we're seeing the responses today that we haven't quite thought of as that's the reason why, the culprit behind it.
How are you getting these ideas for this research? Do you have enough farmers harping on you that says, I want to figure this out?
100%.
And then you obviously need to find funding for it, but
Yep.
that's how it goes.
The tissue testing project, that is not my idea at all. And I, to this day, regret not getting the gentleman's name. I did a talk with the Kentucky Soybean Association, and a hand went up, and he says, well, how do we know what's going on below that most mature? I said, I don't know. We'll go find out. And thankfully, through
Great
the Soybean
hypothesis.
Association, we have it funded, and we're working through with that. That is 100% farmer-based, and most of our projects are from farmer ideas. So,
Did you ever think when starting this study where it would take you, like what you're finding out now, or did you have a hunch? Or
So I think from some of the data points, I'm not totally surprised by what we see. I think there's a little more variability in which nutrients are moving when in the canopy that shocked us a little bit. But as far as the trends, I mean, a lot of it makes sense. The lower canopy starts to become deficient much earlier and moves them and remobilizes faster. But I will say what I wasn't quite expecting was the amount of interest and where it's going. By far the project I get the most questions on.
Oh,
no doubt.
interesting.
I mean, by at least threefold what our next best, most popular project would be. So we're excited about that, and I didn't quite expect that. It's a little bit humbling too, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of expectations of what we find out
No
of this
pressure,
work.
Connor.
No, not at all. Happily, I've got a good support team here, so
Yeah.
we'll work through it together.
Okay, so harvest is coming up. What other projects are you really excited about that you've been working on?
Yeah, so sorry, Stephanie, we're going to go back to corn for just a little
You're
bit.
fine.
but,
You're okay. I'm just
Whole
I like to
systems
tease you.
approach.
Good soybean follows good corn, right? This is one that's a little controversial, and I get some pushback on it, but we did 2 years of the phantom yield loss on the corn. And the idea that high moisture corn versus low moisture corn respires but in the gap, and if you harvest earlier, you're getting more dry matter than if you harvest late. We did 2 different years, and our data just doesn't show that. You do not lose physical dry matter on the plant, which means if we go start a field at 25% moisture, we get rained out for 2 weeks, and we finish it at 17, and there's a 15 bushel yield difference. It's either harvest loss. I think the biggest culprit is yield monitor calibration. Did we recalibrate for 17% grain? Probably not. And then wildlife, I mean, if you lose one 500 kernel ear in a 250 square foot radius, that's a bushel per acre. That could be it falls out just because it's getting late. A raccoon knocks it over. You know, if a deer takes out 5 plants,
We got
there's 10
critters
bushel.
in my neck of the woods, that's for sure.
And so I think a lot of it, that's, you know, what have we been working on? We aren't doing it again this year, but as we get into harvest, where my mind goes, this idea of phantom yield loss, it's either real yield loss, monitor calibration issues, and then the real, it could be biological or mechanical. And with the weather we're having, we're going to see smaller seed smaller seed weights this year, corn and beans. My big thing right now is I push forward and talk to farmers. We get prepared for harvest. Be very diligent behind those combines and make sure we're catching as much as we can. And the smaller the seed, the harder it is to catch it all. So that's the big thing I've been talking about the last few weeks. And anytime I really focus on harvest capture this year, I've driven by too many fields the last few seasons that, wow, that's a beautiful cover crop. And then you go walk into it and nope, that's beans. And even corn in some
Well,
cases.
I mean, part of that was it was so dry last year.
Agreed.
It was depressing.
Yep.
It was very depressing.
Yeah, when you start at 13% in the morning and then it's, 9% by the evening.
Yeah.
So, and then, yeah, there's some stuff you just can't control.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
doing what we can to maximize the value.
But I think that's a very good message, what you're saying, yes.
Yep.
And everybody's getting ready to go.
That or, the first 100 acres, we're so diligent and then, all right, we're smooth sailing and now we got to get it done. We can plant a lot of acres very fast these days. Mm-hmm. The combine speeds have not maintained the same pace as our planter speeds. So just as fast as we can plant them, we can't harvest them. And then it's, we planted everything in 10 days, but it's still going to take 20 days to harvest it all. And I think that's some of it too, is the first half of harvest is perfect and then boom, it's dry and it's moving faster because you planted all at the same time.
Beans go a lot faster than corn. Corn's, it's going to, we'll see how it is this year. I don't know. I'm still going back and forth. We did another podcast about yields, and of course that's the number one question I get asked. And I think we're just going to have lower test weights this year. I don't know about the grain fill is what I'm really worried about. But we were set up so perfectly.
Yep. And then you brought up another controversial topic.
Oh, the test weight. Ooh, let's talk about it.
So thousands of data points, we plotted it. Test weight and yield, no correlation whatsoever. Test weight and harvest moisture, big correlation, and it's negative. That is, the lower the moisture, the higher the test weight. Small kernels pack well. However, when you get dry conditions like this, it can lower the kernel density, and we probably will have low test weights this year, not as related to moisture, just because they are starting to give up sooner, and they might be a little more airy inside the kernels in the seed. Mm-hmm. So it probably will be, for a combination, a year of lower test weight for that. But then the other thing is, if you want high test weight, let it dry down. But then we go back to the whole phantom yield loss. The longer you let it dry down, the risk is something else will lose it, whether it's harvest loss or wildlife. So it's a balance. But unfortunately, as a biologist, test weight is meaningless because it's weight and moisture, but it very much influences the sale value of the elevator. And you, as a producer, cannot ignore that because it does influence your bottom line.
Yep.
And I totally respect how you have to integrate that into your system and try and harvest for good yield with test weights because there's premium or at least no dockage for having it right. So. Yep.
And we're sitting here at the end of August here at Farm Progress Show. Harvest is on the many minds. You've covered some of that. Is there anything you haven't covered so far that should be on farmers' radars coming up this fall?
Yep. So it probably is going to be a slightly earlier harvest, which brings us to the residue side. A faster start to residue decomposition, but for those that are no-tilling or cover cropping, just being ready for it, I think. Harvest will be here sooner than we know it, and then if you are cover cropping, it's like, well, we got the crop harvested, now we got to get the cover out, and it goes fast. So it is hard to be thinking about, before we get this year's crop out, we need to be thinking about preparing for next year's crop, but you do, because as soon as that combine goes through, you're making decisions on fall fertilizer, fall residue management, whether that's tillage or other aspects, cover cropping. So now is the time. Set the plan out. Make sure you have all the resources there, because once the combines start, you don't have time to sit down and plan again. Mm-hmm. So definitely take the next 2 weeks to have the next 2 months planned out and hope the weather cooperates.
Okay, so I think labor too is what everybody around home is just trying to find a truck driver or anybody.
My dad's retired. I said, you need to start driving truck for the local farmers. It's like, one, mom would love to get you out of the house a little bit. And two, it'd be good for you and a hobby. Yeah, but labor, it's big. Yep.
Yep.
It's going to be a big issue.
We're going to send this episode to him. Dad, are you listening?
He can do it.
That's very true. I think this is the first year I've seen so many postings about wanting truck drivers or elevators needing help running the scale, things like that, and it's a never-ending issue, that's for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so real quick, I want to ask about the B word. Do you know what the B word is? Biologicals.
I'm like, I know what the D word is.
She knows what the D word is. Dicamba, for those wondering. But biologicals, I don't want to open a whole can of worms because we could go down a rabbit hole for hours. But are you still getting as many questions as you used to about biologicals? I mean, I saw at the crop field day that huge graph of all the biological products, biostimulants, whatever. But I'm just curious, are you still seeing that farmer interest?
So still getting a lot of questions about it. I do think the momentum has slowed a little bit, partly because there is just so many products. People are overwhelmed. It's just like, I just can't make a choice, so I'm not going to make one. Still getting a lot of questions on it, and that's largely because the big companies have all invested in the big seed, the big fertilizer. So even those staples that you have to have, right? We know you need seed. You can't have the crop without it. And then fertilizer is still very important for making sure we get the crop nutrition. Those are the top two things. And if everybody you buy seed or fertilizer from now has some sort of biological aspect, it's in the conversation.
Right.
So still getting a lot of questions on it. The regulatory side's a whole different podcast. We can go down the other way. I think there's a lot of excitement for what it could be, but we need to make sure we really do a lot more due diligence in understanding which microbes, which scenarios, before we're ready to fully launch some things to market.
And talk real quick, you had a paper published, is that correct? Talk a little bit about that, because I thought it was a very good read.
So when you said the B word, biologicals, the other one, right, biostimulants?
Yeah.
You heard that one?
Yeah. Thank you. I learned that the other day.
Bioenhancer,
Oh.
biofertilizer, bionutritional.
Okay, I did not know all that.
Exactly. So depending on who you talk to, they all have a different word for it, and that's what we kind of had to tease out. Long story short, if you're an academic or in government and policy, it's biostimulant. Biologicals is not a term used in the government regulatory piece. Biostimulants is the term. And then you talk to a farmer or a lot of industry, biologicals.
Yeah.
And wow, that must be two different things. No, when you get into the conversation, we're talking the same thing. And so the commentary was just kind of, we need to get on the same page. By and large, those on the government side, or those that lobby with government, treat biological to include biopesticide, biostimulants, and bionutritionals. But very few, especially in the row crop world, think about biopesticides when you hear biologicals. It's all the positive stuff. Pesticides is pesticides, whether it's chemical or biological. It's regulated and everything. It's all this new stuff on the nutritional side. So that was kind of what we broke down. And then the big gist of it was biostimulants across the world, different countries have different definitions and descriptions, but say substances or microorganisms or their mixture, but it's regulated the same way. And our big thing is living microorganism is a living thing, and a humic acid or an alginate, an amino acid, is a non-living substance input. Do we really think they should be regulated the same way? Should we treat a living inoculant the same way we do some sort of non-living input? Probably not. Right now, regulatory does bind them together, and that was the commentary gist was, hey, the terminology doesn't match among different groups.
Right.
And the product types are so different, is it really fair to put them in one bin? Probably not. So it was a commentary. It was our opinion, backed by some, things that are out there, but we'll see where the market eventually goes. And to kind of round that out, if you're a farmer interested in it, do your own trialing and do those check strips, and don't put the whole farm in right away, and do your own due diligence to really make those decisions.
I think it always comes back to that, Stephanie. That's what we hear. Put in something to compare it to. But we had a webinar this past winter, and the researchers kept saying biostimulants. I'm like, are you talking about biologicals? Because I'm like, they sound kind of the same, kind of different, but it's good to differentiate what they are. So I thought that was quite interesting. Okay, what did we not cover that you want to share with our audience today?
I think it's the third time we've gotten that question. What did we not cover? There is so much to cover, though. Gosh. I mean, I think the big things are, right? So what we've done this year is done.
Yep.
Got to get through, get it out of the fields, but don't overlook the value of starting to already plan ahead. Markets and everything are tough right now, right? I am a biologist, not an economist. You can have other better guests to better have the economy discussions. But there has been this big, farm for yield. I do see this mentality needs to come back a little bit, farm for profit, where we can maybe get the best economics and maybe not the highest yield, but return per acre from a dollar side. It's just things, food for thought to think as we set the next year's plans up.
Yeah. And I think that's what you did at our past field days, too, when you gave that presentation. You gave some things to think about, maybe some easier changes than others.
Yeah, like seed selection, right?
Yeah.
Soybean, up the maturity group. I mean, your fields can handle it. Go from, relative to your region, up 0.3 maturity groups, right? So if you were in this area 3.5, try a 3.8. I don't think you'll be disappointed. No extra cost to do that for the most part, unless that 3.8 happens to be a new release. So.
Stephanie, anything else?
Nope, nothing. I can't think of anything else.
Well, thanks, Connor. You're one of our top guests probably here on the Field Advisor podcast. Probably should start paying him.
Ooh, I'll do that now.
How about we just help fund?
Yeah, there we go. That's the good trade-off. That's a good trade-off. Well, thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. You guys do a great job getting the word out, so happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Field Advisor podcast. Unbiased, independent agronomy information to keep your farm moving forward. I'm Kelsey Litchfield, your voice from the field. This podcast is funded by the Illinois Soybean Association Checkoff Program. Stay connected with Field Advisor on social media. Follow, like, and share to keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe to the Field Advisor podcast on your favorite podcast platform.